Good morning, Frederick County. Welcome to Dana and Charlie, and now our new member, Mr. Scott from the Mountain Patriots Educational Ministries. As you all know, that we try to keep people informed on what's going on in the country, in the world, in the valley. And today's podcast is kind of special because Scott is our newest member to the podcast, and we needed that
Golf clap.
incredible. Yeah, I love it. That incredible God fearing spiritual preacher, part of our ministry. And Scott's been a huge part of it. So I'm going to welcome Scott this morning, say thank you for being here. We've got a lot to cover. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Charlie to explain what we're going to do today. And thanks, everybody. Just make sure that you like and you subscribe and you share everything that we're doing here so that we can bring the community back together. So it's all yours, Charlie. Thanks for doing this, my friend, as always, being here.
Yeah, thank you, Dana. Um, we always like to introduce our guests, have them introduce themselves. Uh, it's always a lot more interesting to hear them than us talking. Now, you're not really a guest because you're becoming part of the team, but we want to get to know you a little more um, ourselves to begin with. So, by way of the background of maybe where you came from in terms of growing up, education, work life, all of that before your current position that you're in with the school board. Um, Give us some of that background. What shaped your worldview, and who are you?
Who am I? Well, my name's Scott Sturdivant. Thanks for
I
having me on
love it.
tonight. It was good. I'm just kidding. Um, I was born in Beckley, West Virginia. Both of my parents came from impoverished backgrounds. My mom was the oldest of 10 kids from the West Virginia coal mines, and my dad was the middle kid of seven. And they really came from nothing. My mom, at the age of 17, after she graduated high school, got on a bus from the coal mines of West Virginia and went to D.C. and started working with the Office of Naval Research. And I've always thought about that. How how much courage did you have to get on a bus and go where you had
It's
no
so
idea
true.
where you were going, to go from that to go into the big city to work? And she helped take care of her family.
And
Um,
17 years old?
she was 7 years old when she got out of high school.
I
Just
love that
that's
number.
always amazed me. Like I said, they came from nothing. Dad dropped out of high school, joined the Navy. They got married while he was in the Navy. And I have a sister, and we ended up living in Dale City, Virginia, which is a suburb of Washington D.C. Grew up there. Um, Went to school there in Prince William County. Got a fine quality Prince William County education. Graduated from high school in 1980. I took a few college classes at the community college up there. Didn't really like it. Um, and while I was in high school, and just before I graduated, the guy I've known since second grade, so I know this guy since 1968. He started teaching me how to play guitar. So I was going to be a heavy metal musician, and I played in a couple bands, and we played some of the finest biker bars up and down Route One in the greater DC area.
For the
Um,
days, I'm telling you.
my one claim to fame is that we opened up for the band Pentagram. They never really got that popular, but if you've seen some of the memes on Facebook, you've seen Bobby Liebling, and that was Pentagram. Um, I was a fry cook for a while. Fell in love, got married, and realized she got pregnant. And I knew I wasn't going to pay the bills being a fry cook, and I knew I wasn't going to be a heavy metal musician for long. So I decided to join the Army. I joined the Army in May of 1985, and ended up in Germany. We had two more kids while we were in Germany. Came back to the States after I got discharged, and my uncle was the sheriff of Frederick County at the time. And I'd always wanted to be a cop. My dad, like I said, he had dropped out of high school, but ended up getting his GED and going on and getting a degree in college. He was the first Sturdivant to ever get a college degree. I was the first Sturdivant to ever graduate high school, believe it or not. Um, but as my uncle was a sheriff, I wanted to be a cop. So he gave me a job reluctantly, and I started working at the old jail, the old Frederick County Jail in Winchester, Virginia, located on 317 South Cameron Street. That was an eye-opening experience. September 26, 1988, when I walked through those doors, had no idea what I was getting into. I'll never forget my first day on the job. Mike Caulfield was the corporal at the time, and he took me. There were 3 floors in the jail. And he took me to all 3 floors, and he was giving me some. This is that. Of course, I'm overwhelmed at the time, and I looked on the floor, and there were these small paper bags with candy bars and things in them, and I said, "Well, what's that?" He said, "I'm glad you asked. That's inmate commissary." I said, "Really? How's that work?" He says, "You pull this slip out, call the inmate's name, have him sign it. You have any problems, call me." And he left me outside the catwalk of a cell block full of inmates, which I'd never dealt with before. And I'll never forget it, calling the first guy's name out and taking that slip and slipping it through the bar with my hand shaking. "Please sign this and don't kill me." That kind of stuff. But it just went from there. And then, like I said, I did 26 years at that jail. Of course, we became the regional jail, and we moved to a brand new spanking jail in 1991. Retired as a lieutenant in October of 2014. Went and worked 10 years part-time at the jail in Manassas. So I did 36 years as a correctional officer. Saw a lot of things that I'll never forget. Ended up writing 2 books. Some of the finest bathroom reading you could purchase for $10.99 that nobody ever did. My mom
This is going to be fun.
Yeah, my mom and dad were both Christians. He got saved first, and I remember we're sitting around like, what in the heck is wrong with him? And then my mom got saved, and she had lymphoma, Hodgkin's disease, and right before she died, she was a awesome Christian, probably one of the strongest Christians I ever saw, and she ended up. They gave her a bunch of chemo, and she had no immune system left. And
We
I
were
remember
talking about this last night, weren't we?
she started hemorrhaging, and it put her in a coma. And she was in a coma for like 3 months, maybe 4 months. They had to amputate both her legs below the knee, and the doctors were telling my dad, "Well, just let the gangrene kill her," and he said no. And they amputated both her legs below the knee. She comes out of the coma, and they tell her that they had to amputate her legs, and what else are they going to do to me? That kind of stuff. And she came out of that coma, and that was 1989, and she ended up dying of pneumonia in December of '89. But she was one of the strongest Christians I ever met in my life.
Wow.
And we were going to the Winchester Pentecostal Holiness Church, and I played around a lot. And I'm ashamed to say it. I claimed to be a Christian for many years and never was. Matter of fact, at the old jail on Cameron Street, right about a year or so before we moved into the new jail, they were going to escape. And the plan was to escape on my shift, and they were going to cut my throat. And I just was not there the night that they planned to escape. And all these years later, I think about it, and God saved me from dying because they were going to kill me. I even asked them after they got caught and locked back up. I said, "Was it your plan to kill me?" I said, "Yeah, we were going to kill you. We were going to slit your throat."
Wow.
And it kind of gives you an aha moment when God saves you from something like that.
Absolutely.
And again, I played a lot of games, but just something happened, and I started realizing who God was and how great he was. And then I got the opportunity to start ministering. I started singing in church. And people have given me this saying this was a stupid analogy, but I give all my, I kind of, the rock band Kiss was my idol when I was a kid. I loved them. My parents took me to my first Kiss concert in December 1976. But that band changed my life to making me want to learn how to play the guitar. And through playing the guitar, I got in a band and I began to sing, and I honed all those skills. So then I started taking those skills and singing in church and playing the guitar in church. And one day, one of the inmates, her cousin went to my church, and she was telling the inmates that I was singing in church, and they sent me an inmate request form. We want you to come and sing at our Bible study. I'm like, I'm not coming in there and singing for these inmates. But I thought about it and I did it. And that's when Singing CO Ministries started and kind of took off. And for years, I did a lot of singing. But then I started getting the opportunities to preach. I became a Civil War reenactor. And I injured this shoulder in a fight with an inmate. Guy got locked up on his wedding night and tore my rotator cuff. Well, as I was going through the healing process, I couldn't tote the rifle anymore because I just didn't have full use of the arm. And I asked if I could preach at a couple of the events, and they said, well, sure. And I kind of just grew into the ministry at that point. And I met a guy named Alan Farley, who was the founder of Reenactors Missions for Jesus Christ. And I'd seen him preach at several Civil War events. And he took me under his wing and gave me opportunities to minister and took a chance on me when a lot of other people didn't. He didn't know me from anybody and allowed me to go down to Aiken, South Carolina for their revival of the 150th anniversary of the Great Awakening in the Southern Army. And he let me preach. And we became close friends. And unfortunately, he passed away almost 2 years ago. But it's been just that whole taking the gospel of Christ to people. That's been my whole focus here lately. Like I said, grew up here, been living here in Winchester now for close to 40 years now, and I never really was an activist. When I was a kid, I was as left as I could be. I really did not. I did not like Ronald Reagan, believe it or not. I'm ashamed to say this, but in 1980, my first vote was for Jimmy Carter. That's the only Democrat I ever voted for. But when Ronald Reagan got shot, I started looking at the world a little different when I heard some of the things he said. When he was joking with the doctors, I hope you're all Republicans. That kind of, I forgot the
that was hysterical.
And
there you
I
go
started
again.
listening to him then, and I slowly started to change from that left-wing heavy metal guy to I started paying attention to the things that he was doing. And when I was working at the jail, I kept walking through and I kept seeing this guy on the TV, and I didn't quite know who it was. We would do inspections or whatever. Right. And I would listen to a little bit of this guy on the TV, and I wasn't sure who it was. And one day I asked one of the inmates, I said, who is that guy? He says, oh, that's Rush Limbaugh. I said, who? Rush Limbaugh. And we're talking 1994-ish, 1995-ish. And I found out he was on the radio, and I started listening to him on the radio, and Rush Limbaugh really changed my worldview. And I learned a lot from him, and I was listening to other people like G. Gordon Liddy, who, I mean, he had his moments. Laura Ingraham on the radio. Mary Madeline had a radio show. I used to like her show. And I became a right-wing radio talk show junkie. Even to this day, I love it. Chris Plant, who's on WMAL, I think, one of the finest people on the radio. But I get all of my news from there. But they helped change the way I thought about it. And then when we were having the masking issues during COVID, when they shut the schools down and then they let the kids go back, I attended my first school board meeting because when the new governor came into Virginia and said, take the masks off those kids, our school board had a meeting, and I went and spoke, let the kids have the masks off. And I'll never forget, the school board basically thumbed their nose at the parents and said, no, we're not doing that. They're going to stay masked. And I was going to go to the next meeting, and my grandson came home from school sick, and I ended up getting sick and found out it was COVID. So he brought COVID home from the school because he was wearing the mask to keep me safe. But that's not what made me want to run for the school board. During that time, before I got to the next school board meeting, I took my granddaughter wanted to go to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. She'd never been. So we took her, and as I'm going up there, of course, Civil War reenactor, the unit that I reenact with, the 8th Virginia, got slaughtered at Gettysburg. So Gettysburg is near and dear to my heart. And as I'm explaining some of the battle and I'm asking her questions, she didn't know who Robert E. Lee was. She didn't know who George Gordon Meade was. I gave her a pass on that one.
Right.
We went by Harper's Ferry. She didn't know anything about
Well,
John
John
Brown.
Brown, right?
None of that stuff.
Nobody
And
was teaching it.
well, she was supposed to have gotten this in the 4th grade.
Right.
And when we get to Gettysburg, the Eternal Flame Monument there at the first day's battle portion of the battlefield, she saw the inscription Gettysburg Address and didn't know what it was. So she asked my wife, what's the Gettysburg Address? She said, well, you better ask your grandpa about that. And she came up and said, what's the Gettysburg Address? I said, you got to be kidding me. You don't know what the American... Abe Lincoln is not my favorite president by far, but the most iconic speech of any American president, by far, hands down,
Is the
she didn't know
Gettysburg
what it
Address.
was. She knew nothing about it. The only thing I said, what did they teach you about the Civil War in school? She said, the Confederates were the bad guys.
That's it.
And I have relatives who fought on both sides of that war, but I am direct descendant. My 2 times great grandfather, John Thomas, was in the 3rd Tennessee, got captured at Vicksburg. My 3 times great grandfather, Moses Walls, died in April of 1863. His brother died. I have a lot of relatives. One of my great great grandfathers died in a Confederate prison camp in Ohio. So that really went through me kind of like crap through a goose. And I went to the next school board meeting. After that, and I said, look, and I explained everything. My granddaughter didn't know any of this stuff. I said, my ancestors didn't fight in the 4th Virginia, the 17th Virginia Cav, the 54th Virginia, the 3rd Tennessee, and all the other units for you to tell their direct descendants that they were the bad guys. And I'll never forget the one board member in particular smirked at me and thought it was funny. And I said, okay. And I took a line from Jennifer Wexton, who was a congresswoman at the time for the 10th district. And in her campaign, she said, change is coming. I said, you know what? I got news for you. Change is coming. And they laughed at me. And so in 2023, I decided, you know what? I think that was 2022, maybe early
2022, because we started working. You were
and I
coming to all the
said,
meetings.
you know what? I'm going to run for the school board next year. And I remember we were going trout fishing, me and my son. And as we came by the guardhouse there where we live, and I saw all these people sitting there, and we saw this group of people a couple times. I said, I wonder what they're doing there. And
I wonder what they were doing
son
there.
said, I don't know. I don't know what they're doing there. And it was a couple weeks after that one of the Mountain Patriots, when he found out I was running for school board, called me and said, hey, come to our meeting. And I'm like, oh, that's what they're, and I don't know how long ago that was, but I've been.
That's a good over 3 years ago, Scott.
So, and then I joined the Mountain Patriots from then, and y'all have been decent to me and helped me get elected. And I did manage to get elected. I had a very slim margin of victory, a little over 1%, but it was enough to get me on the school board. And the funny thing was, the people that were laughing at me when I said I was running, they ain't laughing no more because now I'm on the school board.
Let me preface something here. There's a couple things I want to hit on here. First off, you just went through your history, and you were able to talk about Tennessee and the Gettysburg Address and what people don't know and everything else. One of the reasons that Mountain Patriots got together, number one, was because of the masks and so forth. A lot of us don't pay attention. We elect people, and then we hope that they're going to do the job for us. But then when COVID hit, things were crazy. When you got to Mountain Patriots, we did support you for the school board for the same reasons, because when Scott came in here, Charlie, he was talking about exactly what he's talking about now. My daughter didn't know this, my kids didn't know this, and so forth. So I'm going to bring this up now. One of the things, Mountain Patriots has 7 different ministries, and Charlie can explain a little bit more about this too. But this is, and as soon as our website's up, what we're doing, Scott, is you're right. Kids don't know anything. North, south, east, west. Okay. The word news actually stands for north, east, west, and south. A lot of people don't even know that. Okay. But what Mountain Patriots wanted to do with everything that's going on and the turmoil in this country is we started a new project in one of our 7 ministries, and it's the education. And you are huge into education. Okay. Huge. We've got a lot of people that are behind this, but we are putting together, and we know that you're going to be DL Moody. So we're going to go back in history for the 250th anniversary of this great, incredible, best country ever under God, ever developed and grown. And we're doing podcasts where we'll be able to get the parents, the teachers, the kids all involved in period costume. And I'll have Charlie tell you a little bit about this too, what he about George Washington and what he did. But have those people come on and give us the history like you just did. You just gave us your family, but we want to hear from Grant. We want to hear from Lee. We want to hear from George Washington. We want to hear from Thomas Paine. We had somebody come up to me last night, a good friend of ours, one of the Mountain Patriots, and say, you know what? On that podcast, this historical podcast you're all doing for the 250th anniversary, I want to be Thomas Paine. I'm doing research on Thomas Paine. I've always loved Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death. But this gives us an opportunity to bring all of the people, all of the kids, all of the families together and go back and look at our history in our 250th anniversary to bring that back to life and bring that back into the school system and teach people just how great this country is. Are we always good? No, we're one nation under God. We've made a lot of mistakes, but we're going to learn from all of the stuff that we're doing right now. But we're going to do it through live history with actual people playing the parts of in a time machine and be able to interview those folks. Like you, Scott, you're going to do DL Moody. Charlie, why don't you tell us a little bit about George Washington and what we did at the last conference, and then we'll move on a little bit more with Scott with what we're covering today.
Right, right. Well,
This is great.
where this came from was Liberty Man, Larry Johnson down in Front Royal. He's a member of the Shenandoah Christian Alliance,
Right.
just like I am. And he dresses in period costume of the Revolution and goes around teaching homeschoolers, Christian schools, public schools, giving a little couple hour up to our presentation on history, on various portions of history. And he even has relatives that fought in the Revolutionary War.
Right.
So,
but he knows the history.
One of the things that I did, Shenandoah Christian Alliance, by Dale Carpenter, had a uniform for George Washington.
Right.
So I was willing to. He stopped using it, wearing it at various events, and I said, "Well, I'll do that." So I got into being Washington a little bit. I went around with Larry to a few schools, and mostly it was Larry. It wasn't me as George. I was there, but at their Wake Up Winchester #6, I think it was.
Yep.
I did a speech as George Washington, how he grew up, where he came from, and talked about the
7.
the Declaration of Independence.
Right,
And
that's right.
I did
was first.
I wrote a reinterpretation of the Declaration in today's English from what it was originally, but meant the same. So as George Washington, I shared that. Two meetings later, Winchester #8, I also did, as George Washington, an explanation of the 7 things that led up to the Declaration of Independence and the Revolution. And Larry came to me and he said, if we can capture this in a small bite, it might be like 20 minutes, that I can share with everybody that I teach, so it can live on and do the same thing with him, capturing his ideas
Right.
and his talks so it can live on beyond us and be an educational component that's in addition to the schools that they can use. And that's Dana jumped on that right away too. And so that's where that's coming from. And since there's the 250th anniversary coming up, we decided that we can do these kind of little vignettes all the way up to present day. So not just George and the Revolution,
Hopefully, we
uh,
get Donald Trump to
include
do
the
the last one before
Civil
the
War,
4th of July.
the the big wars, the big events that happened in history, the biggest presidents. We'll do um, what we can, pulling it together and sharing it on this podcast, where we, the podcast, interview the famous person from the past,
Mm-hmm.
and them being in period. So that's the genesis of this historical project we've got going.
And I'll add to that because it Wake Up, which I think it was Wake Up Winchester #6. Some of this stuff is we're missing some of it because Rick had ended up with it. Okay, God rest his soul. We lost our good friend Rick Choi, and he's like irreplaceable. But when we did, I think it was Wake Up Winchester #6. Scott, you were in period costume
Yeah.
from 1863. Okay, talking about the education system that actually happened back then. So we had, and hopefully we can get that piece and get it published, which Rick was actually in the middle of working on. But we
Or
want to
we'll do
bring
it
that
again.
history. Pardon me?
Or we'll do it again.
Or we'll do it again. And because I mean, we watched a Civil War preacher in the pulpit, which was you, Scott,
Yeah.
talking all about the education back then, and it was fantastic. You can't to recapture that is just unbelievable. So we are really happy that you're in the middle of doing all of this stuff with the Mountain Patriots, with what's going on, with your heart for America, knowing what's happening and helping us. And as we go further with this, and I'll just I'll preface it this way: Scott is now going to be part of the 3%, so that when we're interviewing the different candidates and we're interviewing different people all over the valley, and even national figures that we get on here, we're going to have a lot of fun with this, and we're going to be able to bring America back to life like we're doing right now, as we're seeing out there in the public eye. So are you ready to do all this stuff, Scott? You ready?
I am. And one thing I'll bring up when you're talking about doing these historical figures and
Mm-hmm.
teaching kids about the history, that's the one thing that has always bothered me.
Yeah.
When I went to school, I mean, they touched on the Civil War, those kinds of things, but we'll take George Washington, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Never really learned a lot about George Washington. And I remember when Glenn Beck had his TV show on Fox,
I used to do the boards,
he would do the boards,
the
but
whiteboards.
he started talking about George Washington. And I forget the title of the book now, but there was a book on George Washington that I got and I actually read it. And when you get into the meat of who that man actually was, they always say that the founding fathers were deists. They really didn't believe in as we modern Christians do today. That is so wrong. They were God-fearing Christians. Most of
Yes.
them were. Now, Thomas Paine was not, but most
Right.
of them were. But if you read what George Washington wrote and the things that happened, um, it brings it to life. I remember I was at one of the school board meetings, and somehow we got talking about history, and I said, "All right, let me ask you this question." Now, most of these people in this room are people with doctorates, so they're supposed to be
Right.
pretty smart people. And I said, and this was before Trump's reelection, I said, there's been 46 presidents, but only 45 men have been president. You tell me why. And they all looked at me. They had no clue. I said, you got to be kidding me. All of you got doctorates. Well, what's the answer? I said, Grover Cleveland was 22 and 24. He got elected to, well, the only one at the time who got elected to 2 non-consecutive terms. Well, why does that matter? Oh, what do you mean, why does that matter? You need to know where you come from. And one thing that also got me on the school board if you ever go to YouTube, there's a guy named Justin Awad who does the man on the street interview. I don't know if you've ever
Oh,
seen.
I've watched Justin, and
And
he asks these kids, and he asks people, and they look at the who's a. What was one of the questions that really got me? I apologize, Scott. Was
no, that's fine.
who was between who fought in the Civil War,
And they can't tell
and they
you.
can't tell you,
And
or
these
they
are the
who
same kids
what
who are
happened in World War II.
screaming, tearing down statues, and they can't even tell you which sides fought in the Civil War. It's ridiculous. I remember when they were ripping all the statues down, the 54th Massachusetts, which was an all black regiment, other than the officers, they wrote racist on the monument to the 54th Massachusetts in Boston. And I'm like, how stupid can you be? They were black troops and you're calling them racist?
Right.
It's just so insane. People do not understand where we came from, who we are, and how can you as a person decide what you're going to be if you don't keep up with where you came from. And I don't know if you can see this, but we talk about ancestors.
Right.
This guy right here, can you see that?
Yes, I can
Yeah.
see that.
That is William Cody Richmond, and he's like my 7 times great grandfather.
Are you talking about
He
Wild Bill?
No, he was a Revolutionary War soldier,
Okay.
and I believe he was in the 3rd Virginia Infantry.
Hmm.
But I found him when I started doing genealogy, and I found a lot of relatives that I didn't know about, and I list all my veteran relatives. I have an ongoing list, which I can't even remember how many people are on it now. But going back from the French and Indian War up to the War on Terror, and we need to remember who those people are. And matter of fact, there's a book that I got off of Amazon on my William Cody Richmond. It was kind of fascinating. But how can you, as a people, continue to move forward if you don't know where you came from? And
How
most
do you
of the
know where
people.
you're going unless you know where you've been?
Exactly. And most people are ignorant. I used to quiz my kids and they'd get sick of it. Who's the Secretary of State? Who's the Secretary of Defense? Who's the vice? Some people can't even tell you who the vice president is. I remember one time I was standing at the booking desk, and one of the inmate workers walked up and I said, "Watch this." And I turned around and I asked this female inmate, I said, "Who's the vice president of the United States?" She couldn't tell me. That is sad.
Right. You know, and we're to try to bring this back. We put together a program, Scott, called ABC 123. It was called the American Business Course, and then the 123 was the math part. And I've got to get the program back for that we built. But we did 130 questions for kids to be able to learn this. And it was a multiple choice thing, and you read a little thing, and then you went back and answered A, B, C, or D. And what was wild about this is out of the 130 questions, we were afraid that we would get shot down. It was a business promotion, is what we were doing, and trying to teach history at the same time. We ended up using the immigration test
Oh my.
because right, the immigration test, and it's amazing that people that come over here that are legal will have no
Yeah.
problem with immigration legally, none, because we are a melting pot. We are a good Christian country, but you've got people that come over here and because of that test know more about our country than the people that are on the street. And one of the
Exactly
questions:
right.
what are the 3 branches of government? Uh Banking.
How many senators are
How
there?
many senators are there? Okay. How many people are in Congress? Who's your mayor? Who's your governor? But this is the kind of stuff you can't
and
expect people to go further unless they know. You can't know where you're going unless you know where you've been. Go ahead, Charlie.
and what we have
Fascinating.
what we have an opportunity here to do
Huge.
is not just educate them on the dates and the places and the people,
We get to learn.
but we can do enough digging to find out the person behind who the person is that we're talking about, and what made them, where they came from, how they learned what they learned. Something more interesting than a name and a date.
Right.
So if the more we can make this feel like it's living, we have that opportunity, the better.
Well,
We're
if
going to
you
talk to
right,
D.L. Moody. We want to hear from him directly. We want to hear from Teddy Roosevelt. We want to hear from Amelia Earhart. We want to hear from
That takes some
Harriet
extra
Tubman.
digging.
Okay. We want to hear from Jackie Robinson. What was it like, Jackie?
fascinating human being.
Fascinating. I mean,
Yeah,
holy cow.
that's one of the things that I like about the Civil War reenacting, because people just don't know. Period. All they know is what they hear from the drive-by
We're
media or
all
whatever.
guilty of it.
Um, it's like the Confederate flag. They all see the battle flag. That's the Confederate flag. That was never the national flag of the Confederacy. There were actually three national flags. And when I'm out at these events and I'll show them the first national flag and the second national flag and the third national flag, and they're like, no, 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 it's that flag. No, that's not the Confederate, those types of things. But simple things like Virginia. I'll show people. I have the unreconstructed version of the Virginia flag before the one we have
Very
today.
cool.
Talking about the seal. Most people don't even know there's a back to the Virginia seal. They just see what's on the Virginia flag, the front of it, which is the Roman goddess Virtus
Mm-hmm.
standing over tyranny. Matter of fact, I'll tell you this story. When I was working at the jail, one of my
See, I
officers,
don't know this. I
one of
know
my
bits and
officers,
pieces of it. I know Maryland.
yeah, well, one of my officers called me up front and said, I got to tell you this. I said, what? She says, this lady came in to drop off a money order for an inmate, and she asked me, was I proud of that flag? And she said, which flag? I said, that blue flag out there. Are you proud of that flag? And she says,
What
well,
flag is
yes,
that?
ma'am, I am proud of that flag. It's a Virginia flag. And she started screaming at her, how can you be proud of that flag? It shows a picture of a black man standing over, or a white man standing over a decapitated black man. And I'm like, she told you what? And it's clearly a female because she's half naked on the flag. And
Right.
it's not a black man laying on the ground. It is a tyrant with the crown knocked off his head. So people just see what they want to see. And when you start, so I discussed this is the Virginia seal. One of the founding fathers, George Mason, was one of the people that came up with Virginia seal. It's the
Wow.
Roman goddess Virtus standing over tyranny. Note the crown's knocked off his head. The chain in his hand is broken.
Thank you.
Sic semper tyrannis, thus ever be to tyrants. And there's a back to the seal with three different Roman goddesses on it that nobody knows about. Those types of things that you get to tell people about, and we'll take General
It tells
Jackson,
a story. Look at the
but it does.
story to this.
But I'll give you my favorite General Jackson story. Everybody, of course, Jackson and Lee have been disparaged over the last few years, the racists, whatever.
It's our
Jackson
history.
Jackson was teaching when he was at VMI, had Bible study classes for the slaves, was teaching them to read the Bible against the law of the Commonwealth because you couldn't teach a slave to read, teaching them about God. And after he went off and fought in the war, there was one couple that got married that were going to his Bible study. They had a child, and that child later became a preacher. And he had a church in Roanoke, and on the stained glass window in the church, the last words that Jackson uttered before he died was, "Let us cross over the river and rest beneath the shade of the trees." So in
Wow.
the stained glass window was a camp, a river, and a clump of trees in
Mhm.
honor of Jackson, because it was through Jackson that his mother and father had gotten saved, which in turn he became a preacher because his parents were saved. So he was paying tribute to General Jackson, who had brought Christ to them. That church later burnt down, but they saved the window. And as far as I know, that window is still in that church today. But you tell somebody that all they're saying, he was a racist. He was this. Remember when they spray painted the monument at
Oh,
Manassas Battlefield and they had
yeah.
to scrub the paint off? Racist. Okay, I don't know too many racists that are going to break the law and teach slaves to read the Bible. And I'm not saying the South was right. I'm not going there. I'm just telling you. Once you
It's
know
history.
who these people really were,
Right.
what were
Yeah.
they like, what did they do, it brings it a little bit closer to home, and you can make a better decision about what you think about that person.
Well, all the stuff that we know today is on TikTok.
Yeah,
you know, but
So there's
what's
a lot of
really
other stuff.
fascinating, I'm going to shift gears just a little bit because in the essence of time, I love this conversation. Scott, you and I, we could talk all the time about this stuff. Charlie and I do it. Our friend John, as you know, our scout leader, who's part of
yep.
our council as well. I mean, with the Boy Scouts, all the history there, all of the stuff in the valley where his family grew up, who's buried in Mount Hebron Cemetery. It just goes on. These are our roots. But we're going to fast forward a little bit to today. And I just want to touch on Charlie Kirk because this has been huge. You were talking just a few seconds ago about bringing people to Christ. Who gets down on their knees and breaks the rules to bring Christ back into it? And we are Mountain Patriots Educational Ministries. I make no bones about the fact that I'm trying to bring people to Christ. It's the only way to do it. And our only salvation is the Son. There's no other way to heaven except through Him. But we are seeing right now. Charlie Kirk was a lot bigger. Again, I'm not going to get into the theories behind who killed him, how killed him. I'm going to just bring it to the spiritual part of this. Look at how many millions of people around the world, not just the country, but around the world, are being brought to Christ right now because they're starting to look at a guy they've never heard of.
Exactly.
They've never. Who is Charlie? Who? Well, what is it? Now people are starting to wake up to the founding of this country, the founding of this world from beginning to now. And it just, Barbara and I were sitting here last night saying, holy cow, they've really awakened a sleeping giant. People that have never heard of Charlie Kirk are now looking at the Bible. I was listening to a woman last night. It was actually on a TikTok video. Her husband and her mother and father-in-law are Christians. And she goes, I was like, okay, Jesus this, Jesus that. And after Charlie Kirk was shot, something made me want to open up my husband's Bible. And she opens up the Bible, and you can't make this up. She says, and I was blown away. I opened it up to John 8:32. And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. You can't make this up. You can't make this up. So I wanted Charlie's input on what he sees with Charlie Kirk, and I want your input on this before we wrap this up and we move on, because this is the biggest revival, I think, and we're blessed to be part of this. Mountain Patriots Educational Ministries in the middle of this, and I had a feeling about this over 3 years ago, that this was my calling. This is what I was supposed to do here in the Valley. So I want your thoughts, Charlie, on Charlie Kirk, and I want Scott's thoughts on this.
Well, and I mentioned man in the arena earlier. He was a man in the arena.
Yeah, and man in the arena.
Yeah, and he was.
We did a podcast on that.
He was fearless, and he was on a mission. From very young, he knew his mission, and he wanted to do this. And in addition to that, he was thoughtful and humble and skillful. I mean, I think he had a photographic memory.
I've had to.
Yeah, he had to.
You can't. And you can't quote scripture like that, like he does.
He was very kind, but he was strong in his faith. I mean, he could talk to opponents and debate with them and do it in a way that didn't come across as lecturing, as pushing, as selling. It was just laying out logic and
he could back it up
to today. And he knew where he was needed. And he stepped into that to make a difference. And I heard yesterday there was 37,000 inquiries to Turning Point, and how do we set up a chapter. So hopefully that's going to catch on like wildfire. I heard one little clip, and you go on Facebook on Reels part, There's a lot of reels of Charlie just
Everything right now is
for
true.
like 1 or 2 minutes, kind of like a TikTok video, um, of him sitting at his chair at the table outside, debating with somebody at the microphone. And everyone that I've heard has been pithy, has been right on, has been applicable, but it's not quoting chapter and verse in hell and fire and brimstone. That he appeals to their thinking, to their logic, and does some subtle education for
Right.
them. And the latest one I saw was um, on capitalism. The challenger was challenging him about capitalism being the greed, the source of greed, and the cause of all of our problems. And Charlie very calmly described what happened in Russia and other places where they took away all their property. So nobody owns property. And that did not create the utopia that they had hoped. And it's the boils down to the Christians believe that man is has failed. Man is greedy. Man is born quite naturally with a selfish nature, a fallen nature when it comes to Christ. They, the progressives and the liberals believe that man is perfect. They're born perfect, and they're corrupted by teaching them about Christianity, teaching them about capitalism. That's
Mm-hmm.
how they're made greedy by it's a learned result of from capitalistic ideas, accumulation of wealth. It, it it's totally the opposite of that. You know, it's mankind was born, and this kind of supports um, what's the guy on evolution, Darwin.
Right.
Darwin's theory of the
Of evolution.
survival of the fittest. Well, with greed, naturally comes the survival of the fittest. What happens with Christianity is it puts some guardrails on that
Yeah.
instinct to be the survival of the fittest with morality. And that's that more. It's that kind of thinking that Charlie invoked and challenged and laid out there for people. They may or may not have heard it, but a lot of people have heard it. The speaker, the challenger may not, but it was such a rare treat to hear somebody willing to take on any comers and rarely, if ever, lose his temper.
Or
Always
lose his
provide logic.
background.
Yeah, yeah.
He had it Bible and verse, and he could pull out not just that, but the Constitution at the same time. And we were hearing about how can he be a Christian and a nationalist at the same time? You know, if you haven't heard that, I'm not going to tell you. Go back and listen to, because we followed Charlie for years.
Listen to some of his debates. He was invited to debate in Britain.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
I think it was at Cambridge or
I saw that one.
yeah,
I've
where
seen a
very formal debate, and he can sandwich in his point between being complimentary to those around him
Mhm.
and then lay it out logically, um, something that changes their mind or forces them to think more deeply about what it is where their argument is coming from. So I have a deep appreciation for his skills, abilities, and willingness and humility to stand up and do that.
What was his line? What did he want to be remembered for? Courage in his faith.
Courage in his faith.
It just get well. What do I want to be remembered? I want to be remembered my legacy for courage in
Yeah.
my faith,
He
and
will
that
not.
really that hit me. I felt like that myself, but I was never be able to articulate it that way that fast.
Charlie Kirk lives on.
Scott, what's your take on it, my friend? Because I know you look at everything through a biblical lens.
Well, I been following Charlie for a while. I started seeing those little snippets pop up on Facebook, and I just love the way that he dealt with people. And I watched one this morning that kind of drives this point home. This kid got up to debate the Constitution, how we are a democracy, and and Charlie says, "Well, where in our founding documents does it say democracy?" Well, it doesn't. And this kid was parroting things he had heard from other people, and Charlie was explaining it to him. You know, we're a constitutional representative republic. We're not a democracy. And he was trying to debate the semantics between the two. And this kid just wasn't grasping it. Matter of fact, the other day, I got to hear Senator Mark Warner speak at Shenandoah University. And he was talking about the Constitution. And he brought up the quote from Ben Franklin when they had formed when they were taking care of the Constitution. What do we have, or whatever it was? What do we have? Dr. Franklin says, a republic if you can keep it. Mark Warner says, a democracy. I wanted to stand up and scream. That's not what he said, but I knew better than to do that. But that's what these people do. But Charlie just would talk to people in a way and explain it. You could tell he did his homework. He knew what he was talking about.
Oh, yeah.
I found in life that most people can only parrot the information that they've heard because they don't take the time to look it up for themselves.
Right.
And when you see some of that aha moment come over some of those young people when he's talking to them, and I don't remember if I heard it on Glenn Beck or where I heard it yesterday, but they were talking about the impact of Charlie Kirk. And this mother was packing, her daughter was going to Europe, and it might have been Glenn Beck, but I can't remember who it was. Either way, she's looking through the daughter's suitcase, there's a Bible,
right?
And it must not have been Glenn Beck. Says, we've never gone to church, we've never done anything, and she says, well, why are you putting a Bible in your suitcase? She says, because I want to be like Charlie Kirk.
It's amazing.
And that's it right there. And it's like that scripture I read last night that I'm going to preach on this weekend, Isaiah chapter 6. Also, I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send and whom will go for us? Then said I, hear him, I send me. He had that mission and that love for people that you have to truly believe in it to bring it to other people. And I was watching something today, and they were talking about the people all around the world. They showed South Korea. They had a visual,
Japan,
a visual, and
Israel, everybody.
They were screaming, "We are Charlie Kirk in South Korea," and the impact that this man had
is worldwide.
A lot of people, let's face facts, there are a lot of people that didn't know who he was until he was shot. But it's now that they know and they're looking and they're seeing, I think a lot of people are going to get that aha moment after they hear the things that he says and start to listen to what he said and see how he lived. The impact is just going to be huge. Just like Jesus, once he was crucified and the full plan came and God's full plan for salvation comes down to man. When you see Peter before the crucifixion, and then you see Peter in the book
afterwards
of Acts standing there preaching the gospel, that is a completely different man because of the power and the majesty of Christ and the shed blood, which gave him that power to minister to other people. And I think that's where we're going.
I do too. I mean, that's what I'm saying. We've lived this and we've lived this since we were kids. And now all of a sudden, people are starting to catch on to what's going on. They're seeing it, they're feeling it. And all of the things that we kind of felt as we were growing up, it's like it's right here. How many of these people were disciples that died? They're not going to die for a lie. Not in that respect. Not in that respect. I mean, look what we were talking last night after the meeting about Peter. Okay. And he denied Christ 3 times. We're talking about Judas. We were talking about Peter at the same time. And one of them, okay. And then the other one denied him and repented and came back, and they all died for this. Charlie Kirk was willing to die. And I think that's what it comes down to. You got to die to self in order to be able to carry this forward. And I think we are in the greatest time in history. I just do. And to be a part of that, to be a part of this right now is amazing to me. You know, at a year ago, how many of us would have been thinking like this? We were thinking, oh my gosh, we're going to lose the republic. This is going to happen. We're going to lose our house, and our kids are screwed up and people are dying. We are seeing a miracle right now. And to be part of this miracle to me is mind blowing. It is absolutely mind-blowing. The group of people that we have at Mountain Patriots, the things that we're able to do in our own little way of getting this out to people it's an exciting time. It's an exciting time.
Let me give you one historical perspective, because this kind of reminds me of Charlie.
I can't
Kirk
wait for Sunday.
During the Civil War, again, I'm going back to Civil War.
Okay.
When Custer and Mosby were hanging each other's men, they had captured some of Mosby's men, and they made them draw straws. Whoever got the short straw was going to get hung. And so they drew straws, and the guy that drew the short straw said, "I'm not a Christian. I'm not prepared to die. I've got a family. I can't be killed here." And Albert G. Willis, who was studying to be a minister, grabbed the short straw and said, "Well, I am a Christian. I know where I'm going to go when I die, and I'm prepared to die." And he got hung in that soldier's stead. And there's a highway marker out on 340 where he was executed. But then I bring that back to Charlie Kirk. He knew people hated him, and I'm sure
he knew it was coming.
When you go out, I mean, you never know what's going to happen. But when you're in that position that he was, I probably in the back of his mind, he never really thought it would happen, but he knew it was a possibility. But he did it anyway, because he knew the minute his eyes closed
where he was
on earth, he was going to be standing before the Savior. And I think that's a great way to put it.
I think that's a great place to close it too. And I just learned so much about you with the short straw. This is the kind of thing that we want to get people to, we want to bring out to the public. Let them hear a different perspective. This is a good place to be. It's not a planet of hatred, and it's a planet of love. We can bring that stuff back together. And it really starts, Scott, with the children. And I applaud you. I don't care what people say or think. They don't do research. What you have done and what you're trying to do, especially on the school board, my hat goes off to you, my friend. It really does. God bless you. I'm really looking forward to being out there on Sunday. We actually, Barbara and I decided that, you know what, we're going to take some time off. We're going to go see Scott. We've been wanting to. And hearing you preach at the meetings and so forth, it's amazing. And what a group of people we have. Wouldn't you agree, Charlie?
I fully agree.
Look us up online, guys. I mean, we're Mountain Patriots Educational Ministries, and we care about God and country. That's all I can tell you.
Mountain Patriots Educational Ministry is a blessing, a true blessing.
So, Charlie, first off, I want to say thank you, Scott, for being here. Welcome to being part of the 3%.
Welcome.
I hope people get a lot out of this. We covered stuff that we normally don't cover. Okay? People get a chance to see Scott Sturdivant, not the guy that somebody told them he was. They get a chance to hear from the actual person and who he is, heart, mind, body, soul, spirit. I really appreciate you doing this and being part of the 3%, Scott. I really do. God bless you, my brother.
I enjoy it.
This has been fun, and we've got other ones coming up. So real quick before Charlie does the prayer, folks, help us out. We've got the vigil coming up for Charlie Kirk. That is on the Walking Mall on Loudon Street at 6:30 on Wednesday night. That's tomorrow night. If you see this before, be out there with your candle. Bring your soul, bring your heart, bring your love. We want people to take this video, delve into some of the stuff that we're looking. Don't take our word for anything that we're saying. Go look around for yourself, do your own research. But if you like the content that you're seeing, please like what you're seeing. Share this as far as wide as you can, because we're all about Frederick County and the country, but this is our home. And subscribe, like, share, subscribe. And if you want more information, the website again is being worked on, because all the ministries are there. You'll be able to go back and look at all the different things. The store is being built. There's a lot of things that we're trying to put together. We're spinning a lot of plates at one time, and we could really use some help. So with that, Charlie, I'm going to turn it over to you. And we have our own bylaws. We have our own mission statement, and we have our own Mountain Patriots prayer. So I want to thank everybody for watching today, and I'll turn it over to you, Charlie, to close.
Thank you. Let us pray. Dear Lord, thank you for this beautiful world and this country that you've given us, and the patriots who are willing to care for it. Thank you for inspiring our founders to create this beautiful republic. Please help us to keep it as the aspiring place to live. Please give us the wisdom to do the right things, the common sense to judge wisely, the energy to never give up, and your unending grace in which we take comfort. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Guys, it has been a pleasure. And as we always say, Mountain Patriots Educational Ministries, come back again. This one is in the book. Thanks, everybody.
God bless.